Thanks for coming. Today we're going to do ghosts. It's going to be scary, so stick around. Okay, now that we've sawed our stock, this is, I don't know, 2.5 inches or so. I've got my X and my divot on each side. That's good. This is quarter sawn sycamore that's really old, very dry. I'm using a step center in the one end. What did they call it? A mighty body pointy thing. I'm using a robust live center in the tailstock, and it's just got this little bit pointing out. So let's bring those up. Lock and load. Don't lock and load. Okay, everything's engaged well, tight. We unlock the headstock so I can spin this dang thing. I want to make sure that I got good clearance. We're in the right place there. We put on eye protection because the peepers are expensive. We're going to be using a robust, massive spindle roughing gouge SRG, which used to just be called a roughing gouge. Evidently, there was a bit of shaming involved. All right, so everything's cool here. Let's fire it up. Get some speed on. And we just present and traverse. Check some progress. I got flats. This was a rectangle, so there is some spalting there, which is kind of rare in sycamore around here anyway. But we're going to take that out anyway. Switch to a 5/8 robust bowl gouge. Do some planing cuts here. How are we looking now? Wonderful. Okay. Now I'm going to take a bedan and just square up the ends. Now I have a negative rake scraper that's sharpened on an angle, so I can use that as a dovetail tool. Put on both ends just because. Now I'm going to check that with one of these handy dandy Trent Bosch gauges here. We want to make sure that, although it's going to fit, we want to make sure that, will it fit on that end? Yeah, it does. Okay, we want to make sure that our tenon is going to fit in the chuck. Only need about that much. So I'm going to cut that end off and save it for another project. You know, one of those pieces of wood that you have laying around the shop. Some clearance on the side, clearance. Get that down pretty small without making it fly off the lathe, because that would kind of suck. Now all I gotta do is twist this off. I don't care what the end looks like, and because this is gonna get all trued up and cleaned up anyway. This is a Vic Mark 100. with pretty small jaws. I don't know what jaws these are. I don't know mine, Vic Marks. You just start over a period of time, you just start acquiring chucks to do jobs that you need them to do. And don't care if this is going to be wobbly at all, because we're going to true that up anyway. True that. Okay, now we can bring the livestock back up, give it some support. Everyone likes support. Give this a quick once over right here. All right. So what we need to do now is make a bit of a bell shape, and then a bell shape, and then rounded it on top, a hemisphere on top. And the reason for that is this ghost is in my mind, not a ghost in my mind, but this ghost is think of a young toddler wearing a sheet over his head, and so you have the round dome there, and then going the body, and the sheet of course is too long, so it's going to drape down at the bottom. So what we're going to do is make a bell shape here, and then we'll do a little bit of the hemisphere, and then we'll drill out the center to get most of the meat out. So here's our dome. Remember, this is end grain running parallel to the bed. Now we're going to come in with fingernail ground gouges. Hopefully it's not a fight between them. We'll get this bigger one. We'll get some clearance. I mean, you could do this with all kinds of different tools. Whatever you got, really. Because this shape is pretty simple. Want to make sure I have enough room there. And I don't want to take off too much right now. I need some mass here to support the drilling and the hollowing that we're going to do. So there's a little bit of spalting in there still. I'm going to leave it there. We're going to paint this anyway, so that isn't that big of a deal. Now to drill this out, you could use any number of different types of bits. This is going to be a Forstner bit. It gives me plenty of room in there. Based on the depth I want to go, I'm going to essentially bury it all the way up against the face of the chuck. Do this in fast time. It's very noisy. Whatever you do, don't put your hand on the chuck while you're doing this, because if there's any sharp edges on this chuck and the chuck starts to spin, you're going to shred up your hand. Don't ask me how I know that. Dang, that's noisy. I need some drill oil, wood drill oil. Somebody come up with that. We take the drill out of the chuck for safe storage. Put that away till we need it for later. Not in this project. All right, a quick check with the measuring gauges here. This shows we're right here, about this thick, or that deep. And we're about a little over a 1/4 inch here as well, and then progressively getting a little bit thicker down here. And hollow this out, and you can do this with a number of different tools. You could use a box scraper. If you did it right, you could probably use a skew on end as a scraper. Any number of tools. If the opening was a little bit smaller, I would use Laurent Niclot's hollowing tools, because they're great and I love them and I sell them. So, but what I'm going to use is a Trent Bosch 1/2 inch hollowing tool in a Trent Bosch handle. Since Trent's a friend of mine, I buy a lot of his tools. This one in particular uses a small carbide cutter in it. It's extremely effective. That's probably pretty good. Okay, and I know that I am about this deep, mostly because I've done this video several times. Beginning on the outside towards the end. Now to get some of the depth, get some more depth in there. And all we're doing is just drawing that back. So measurements tell me we're still a little thick here, which is fine. What we don't want to do is go too thin here. If we go too thin there, when we go and we cut the eye, we drill the eyes out, then you're going to have a little bit extra punch on tear out on there. So we want to make sure we don't get that. The trick in blind hollowing is you get your tool in there, and typically you're going to have a little nub right there in the center. So what you need to do then is you're going to do basically bring the tool across like this and up and down gently like this, which is a technique that Mr. Ellsworth teaches to get that center. So you go side to side, up and down a little. Since this is a handheld tool, that's fairly easy to manipulate that process. So one way to accomplish this too is, since this tool only cuts on the very top edge here. So what you do is you can rotate the tool to give some edge, to be able to, that edge will cut. Another option would be to use a round nose scraper. So this is going to allow you to go in like this and just make cuts around like that in a scraping motion. And this one in particular, while you would think that it's going to be too wide, our cutting edge is actually right here, is the top of the apex of the curve on the cutting edge. And that's very noisy. Okay, so let's check some progress here. We're right there. So we're up to here. So let's say at this point you think, you know, I really think I want to make the body a little bit smaller. So we still have plenty of thickness in this. So what I can do is come back with my live center and use the cone of the live center to support the piece. You don't want to put too much pressure on there because then it puts extra pressure on this joint right here, and there's a potential for that to break then. We're going to leave this section fairly thick still here. And come back with the gouge and thin out the remainder. All right, so now what I want to do is clean that up a little bit. It's a little thicker here than it is here. Swell. Okay, then let's go back and round over the kid's dome. Go back and check your depth and thickness to make sure you still have the room you need to get it about the right thickness. So you can see we're at about the right thickness here. I like that. And then coming down all the way. Perfect. It's still a little thick on the end here, and that's okay because we're going to carve a lot of that away. So what we want to do now is sand it some, because it can be difficult afterwards to sand it. So bring in dust protection here. Turn on the dust collector. All right, so I have a piece of Galaxy 180, and I know it's 180 because we put the grit numbers on the back. So turn on my dust collection. Turn the speed down a little. Check our progress. Delightful. Maybe give this a little bit on the end here. I dropped it. So I'm not real concerned with what the inside feels like here, although let's check our depth here. I'm at here. I want to get that a little bit deeper. So let's go ahead and finish that part off. I like that, because now we're up here. I like that. Okay. Now, this is ready to part off, but before we do that, this feller needs some eyes. So let's figure that the eyes are going to be about here. .3/16 drill bit, spade bit, because that way it won't walk around. And I drill this completely parallel. Okay, it walked a little bit. All right. We could have a Cyclops, but that's no fun. Or maybe it is fun, I don't know. That back. Hold the chuck. All right, so now we have our eyes. They're a little bit off, but you know what? It's because the dude cut them funny. All right, now let's sand that line out so we can get a little bit further. Sand this back a little. All right. So we have our eyeballs there. We can refine that a little bit further by taking a file. This is, in this case, this is a rifler, but it does have a complete round section on it. And then just give it a little quick back and forth with that. That cleans it up a little bit, actually. Or we could simply use a dowel with a piece of 80 grit.
And that's why you don't hold on to it. Okay, I lied. We're going to sand the inside.
All right, how do my eyes look? The eyes have it. Still a little bit chewy. All right, I like that. All right, now we need to part it off. So to do this, we're just going to take the fingernail ground gouge and bring this down both sides. We're going to have to put some movement here for clearance, or we're going to have to cut some away here for clearance to get the gouge in there. Remember, we want this to be a hemisphere, so we want to get that as round as possible over the top. Clearance. All right. What we want to make sure is that we have enough room here so that if we get a little bit of tear in that, we can clean it up still. All right, now let's hopefully I can use this. Now let's hope I can do a decent jam chuck to clean it up with. My track record on this is not great. Okay, there we go. Now you don't want to make this too tight. You will snap it because it is end grain. Okay. Finally, after 400 tries, it's still a little bit off. It'll work because of this. Okay, now we want to shave the little feller's dome into shape a little bit. The 80 grit. .120 grit. How do we look? Fantastic. There's the little fella for now. Okay, so when I started this off, I figured out that, you know what, I don't sell carving tools, I sell abrasives. So let's figure out how we can do some little carving with sandpaper. I mean, we already have sandpaper, right? So what I did is I came up with what I would call a carving mandrel. Sure, that sounds good. And what it is basically is just a hard plastic, 3D printed with some Velcro on the back, on the front, with a mandrel, and then all right, so what I'm going to do is take our little feller here, and I'm going to sand away about from here to here, just to make that kind of flat. You know, like our little fellers, add some movement to it. It'll be flat in the front and then drapes towards the back. So let's go ahead and do that. I have 80 grit on there now. We don't want to catch the microphone there. Get our dust collection going, and then just sand this off. Now we want this part here to be even with the body, and so we'll get it close, and then we can do a little bit more detail work on it. Okay,
So we got that pretty close. You can see there's a little bump in there. Let's take some of that out. I don't want to take away too much because I just assume go to a finer sandpaper because then it's going to remove it a little bit slower. Now what I want to do is take this edge and use the edge to carve out some areas here to give it some movement. Let's realign our disc. That'll make it less jumpy. It's a little better. Marginally. Round it a little bit. And then if you want to round the other end, you got to come across from the back or from the top of the sandpaper. So you can see that it gives you some good grooves in there, and because you don't have total control over it, it does give you a little bit of organic look to it. As you can see, it as you dig a little bit deeper, it takes a little bit of time. It probably would be way faster if using a carving tool, but at the same time, I don't have any carving tools for this. All right. So you can see we're starting to get pretty good lines in there. And those would be the wrinkles from the fabric draping down. So let's go ahead and change this out to a Galaxy. It's a little bit stiffer. Let's go get a fresh one. We want to see if we can line that up as good as possible. That looks horrible. Alright, so we have our drapes around there in some kind of rough fashion. Then to take it up further, we want to come into this curve. at the bottom of the fabric. And then we keep going like that. Now, if you wanted to had a curve you wanted to bring this into, like if this bell was a little bit deeper here in this part of the body, you could use a 2-inch one. And come in like that. Okay, now to clean up some of this, and to even it out some, we use some abalone. 240 was probably wishful thinking, but you could take that same disc. Actually, let's go to 120. We can use a 120 here and clean it up a little bit. It'll be a little bit less aggressive. And then get into that curve in here so that we can get a better transition. And then if we wanted to clean it, as we do, see how you have a hard edge there, which is not how fabric would be. You can either go like this and roll that edge, or sand down the edge of a craft stick so you have a little bit of a rounded corner. Then take this and you can run it right up into those creases. And just round those over, give it a little bit more organic look.
Okay, so I've gone and put more creases in, and then up a little where there isn't folds in the fabric. And now let's go take it over and give it a couple coats of white sandable primer. And the reason I use that is because it's going to be a flat white and it's really easy to work with and it dries fast. Okay, so I'm completed that one. I got the eyes done. Here's what it looks like. Just kidding, that's with googly eyes. Here's what it looks like. He looks like a friendly little ghost. And what I did was, after I painted it several coats of the sandable primer, then I took a marker with a brush tip and then went on the inside of the eyes to make them black, to give it some depth. And it worked out really well. Let me know your comments and suggestions, and have a great day. Stay safe. Goodbye.